Hello everyone! Ralph Carter, the actor and singer best remembered for his role as young Michael Evans on the groundbreaking sitcom Good Times, has lived with the weight of public perception for decades, and while many fans only saw the polished image of a child star growing up before their eyes, very few knew the inner turmoil he carried or the private conflicts that shaped his journey. And now, after years of silence, Carter has finally admitted how much he truly hated certain aspects of his life and career, pulling the veil off the nostalgic image so many people still hold, and his revelations have left fans both heartbroken and reflective. Because for years the story of Ralph Carter seemed like a dream, discovered at a young age, starring on Broadway and Raisin, where his powerful singing voice and acting chops earned him acclaim, and then being thrust into American living rooms on Good Times, one of the first shows to portray an African-American family honestly in the midst of economic struggles. Yet what the cameras didn't show was the heavy burden Carter felt, the pressure of being labeled the militant one on the show, the responsibility of carrying social messages at such a young age, and the way his own identity was often overshadowed by the character he portrayed. And Carter has now confessed that while he appreciated the platform, he hated how quickly Hollywood boxed him in, offering him no roles outside the stereotype, no growth beyond being the smart young black kid with a fist in the air. And as he grew older, he resented how the industry that once celebrated him seemed to abandon him, leaving him without direction, steady work, or the kind of respect he thought he had earned. And he admitted that he hated how he was never able to escape being Michael Evans, no matter what else he tried to do, because in the eyes of casting directors and audiences, he would always be that boy from Good Times, not the trained stage actor, not the talented vocalist who could have had a real singing career, but just a memory. And that bitterness carried into his personal life as well, where he struggled to find balance, battling the transition from fame into obscurity, watching his peers either skyrocket into superstardom or fall apart under the same pressure. And Ralph admitted that he too came close to falling apart, that he hated the way he was treated by an industry that profited off his youth, but had no place for his adulthood. And he spoke candidly about how much anger he carried toward producers, executives, and even at times toward his own castmates, not because they weren't good to him, but because he felt trapped in a role while others were able to branch out. And that resentment festered for years until he eventually stepped away from Hollywood altogether, choosing instead to live a quieter life, far from the spotlight. Though even in that decision, he admitted that he hated being forgotten, hated walking into rooms where people barely recognized him unless it was to point and say, "Hey, weren't you that kid on Good Times?" And it took him decades to reconcile the duality of his experience, being grateful for the opportunities but also hating the limitations that came with them. And fans hearing him admit this truth now finally understand why his career faded, why his face disappeared from television, and why he rarely made public appearances, because the world celebrated the character but overlooked the man. And Ralph Carter's honesty today is not about bitterness, but about healing, about reclaiming the narrative of his own life, about telling fans that while he hated the way Hollywood used him and discarded him, he still loves the art, the legacy, and the people who supported him. But he wants the world to know that being a child star is not always a blessing, and that sometimes the very thing that gives you fame is the thing you grow to despise. And in admitting how much he hated those circumstances, he has shed light on the painful reality so many child actors face, reminding us that behind every smile and every memorable scene is a person who has to carry the burden of expectations long after the applause fades, making his story not just about regret, but about survival, endurance, and the courage to finally speak a truth that fans suspected but had never fully heard until now. Thanks for watching.